This is, we've had town hall meetings now for, I guess, nearly 20 years. And 2 or 3 years ago, we started having one in the summer. And the purpose of the summer meeting is to get the citizens' input on our budget. Now, our charter requires that we have our budgets prepared, our budget proposals prepared and submitted to the city council by the 1st of August. So we spend the latter part of July and, June and all of July working towards that. So it's, I don't want you to think that our budget is done this year. We're in the very early part of the city manager's office portion of that. And so our purpose here is not just to tell you what that budget is, but rather to tell you kind of where we are, where we think we will be in the next upcoming year, and to get your input on it. And if you, to take any comments, not a public hearing, our public hearings on the budget will be in August. And, but it's just to get comments on anything budget related. Then at the end of that, we'll open it up to any comments on anything else. And as we typically do in our town hall meetings, we will not let any one person dominate the conversation. We'll give you one question and we'll respond to it. We always promise to, if we can't answer it tonight, we'll get back to you. We'll have a staff member take your name and phone number, we'll get back to you, but we will absolutely get back to you. But we may not have the answer tonight. There's a lot of people here a whole lot smarter than me, that even as smart as they are, they may not have all the answers. So let me introduce our group here. Loretta Getchell is our deputy city manager, and she's the brains behind the operation, and she's going to be making our presentation. But Mayor Pro Tem Leon Hall, our newest council member, Linda Eilenfeld, Mr. Porterfield, I was just kind of seeing if he could catch me to see if he thought I might say the oldest one. No, I wasn't saying that. But of course, Glenn Porterfield has been with us for a long time. Barry Bynum from the end has been with us for a long time. Tim Stenford has been with us for quite a while, and Miss Martin there has been with us for quite a while as well. So we're glad they're here to join us. They'll answer any questions that you might have of them. And so let's listen to the budget presentation, and then we'll answer any questions you might have or take any input you might have on the budget. So Ms. Getchell.
I'm going to try to put this mic here. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Then that way I don't have enough hands for my clicker and my notes if I hold that. So as Gary said, we want to take just a few minutes to provide you with an update on the city's financial condition and to discuss the opportunities and the challenges that we're facing for the upcoming budget year. As we reported to you at last year's town hall meeting, the city has continued to see positive growth in sales tax revenue and in our property values. This is critical in our efforts to restore some of the funding that was lost during the previous year's economic downturn. As some of you may remember, the city cut several positions and departmental budgets in order to manage through those very difficult times, and we are very encouraged that this recovery will allow us the opportunity to begin to restore a portion of the most vital areas that were cut. The housing sector is very important to Euless, and it has been showing very strong signs of recovery in both our home sale prices and in the number of days that the homes are on the market. This positive trend has been reflected in the preliminary valuations that we have received from Tarrant Appraisal District in May. And our primary budget goals for the upcoming year will remain the same as last year, and that includes our commitment to continuing all of our current service levels, maintaining appropriate staffing levels, and sustaining a strong financial position by preserving our reserve levels, and that would be in keeping with our adopted fiscal policies. Our sales tax and property tax are the two primary sources of revenue that support our general government operations. These two sources provide over 60% of the total general fund revenue. We do get revenue from other sources such as our car rental tax, our fines and fees, and licenses and permits. Beginning in October of 2008, our sales tax collections began to drop, and as you can see from this chart, we experienced a significant decline in our sales tax revenue in 2009 and 2010, and we began to see a recovery in that in 2011 and 2012. During the current year, our sales tax revenue is exceeding the prior year by approximately 10%. And while we do expect that this trend is going to start to level off, we do think that we will continue to see some modest growth due to some new businesses. On the property tax side, we've been very fortunate to see a great deal of development in Euless over the last several years. We had seen steady increases in our property tax values until 2010 and 2011, when we did see declines in the overall taxable values. For fiscal year 13, we saw the values restored to slightly above the 2009 level, and a modest increase is also anticipated in 2014. We regained 3.8% of that value in fiscal year 13, and based on the preliminary numbers from Tarrant Appraisal District in May, we're expecting to see another increase of about maybe 3.3% or so in property values for 2014. However, we do not get those final numbers until July the 25th, and obviously we're still in the protest period, so those could change between now and that time. The city has reduced the tax rate from 61.6 cents back in 1995 to the current rate of 47 cents, which is among the lowest in the Metroplex. The council has either held or lowered the property tax rate for the past 19 years. Based on the initial budget analysis, staff does not expect to be recommending any change to the tax rate this year. You may remember that due to requirements in state law, you will likely see an announcement that Euless is raising taxes, just as you saw last year. As we've explained, by holding the tax rate flat during the downturn, as we recover revenue from restored values, this publication is required. Our third most significant revenue for Euless is our car rental tax. This revenue is generated from a 5% tax that's imposed on the short-term rental of motor vehicles. The majority of this revenue comes from the consolidated car rental facility at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, and as we saw in sales tax, we had a decline in our car rental receipts in 2009 and 2010, and those have also started to recover, and we've seen a significant improvement in the past 3 years. Our car rental collections are exceeding the current year budget by 5% year to date, and we don't expect that to continue to grow significantly, but we do anticipate that it will remain stable. Our fines and fees make up about 14% of the total general fund revenue, and these can vary based on the municipal court case volume and the collection rate. In the current year, we're falling just short of our budget, and we expect next year to remain fairly level. As of today, our staffing levels are still down 19 positions. We have begun to fill some of the most critical positions, primarily in our police and fire department, but we have continued to hold several other positions within the other departments. Funding for many of these positions has not yet been restored, and that's going to continue to be a challenge. Euless has the lowest number of employees per capita of any of our surrounding cities. As you can see from this slide, we have 1 employee for every 140 citizens, which is significantly lower than some of our neighboring cities. You'll notice from this slide that Grapevine has 1 employee for every 74 citizens, and Hurst has 1 employee for every 93 citizens. While we were hopeful to begin restoring some funding in 2014, realistically we are doubtful that we will be able to do much more than fill some of our current vacant positions. We will continue to make every effort to restore funding for those positions as the funding continues to improve. Another challenge.
Let me say something right there. That on the open vacant positions that we've been holding, I don't want you to feel unsafe from that. To the best of my recollection, and Chief Rhodes and Chief Brown, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, you have no frozen sworn positions in PD or none in fire. So we have restored. We never really cut any there, but we did hold some as they became vacant. But we're filling those as they become vacant through retirements or whatever. So I don't want you to think that this bare bones budget we've been trying to operate on impacts your fire or police safety. It's mainly clerical and management that we've been holding.
Another challenge we face each year is funding a modest compensation package for our employees. Last year, our employees were eligible to receive a 3.25% raise, and it will be our goal this year to provide some level of pay increase to remain competitive. Healthcare reform will also continue to impact the city as it is most employers. We expect our insurance rates to continue to rise, and that impacts the city's budget and also our employees' premiums. I think I went a little too far here. Department budgets were cut drastically during the economic downturn, and we've had little restoration to date. Some increases will be required for departments to continue their normal operations due to overall rising cost. We will continue to gradually add back the necessary funding as our revenue permits. The City Council heard departmental requests for capital items at a budget meeting in May. The city does not provide departments with baseline funding for capital needs, but instead evaluates these annually on a case-by-case basis. Items that are deemed necessary are considered based on available excess reserves, and we basically use a cash flow method for most of our capital items. The city did enter into a lease agreement for the replacement of our pro rata share of the regional infrastructure that operates the police and fire radio system. This equipment had reached end of life and jointly served several local cities, including Euless. We will be required to make our first payment on that in fiscal year 2014. Again, as we said, we're committed to maintaining our current service levels. In our water and wastewater fund, we have not yet received our 2014 rates from the Trinity River Authority, which is our wholesale water and wastewater treatment provider. But in the previous year, they indicated to us that we should expect a small increase in water rates, and they projected a 23-cent increase in wastewater rates. It's still very early in their budget cycle, so these projections will likely change. But based on this and a general increase in operating cost, we do expect that some rate adjustment will be necessary in our water and sewer fund. However, we will continue to recommend that the rate stabilization fund be used to help offset a portion of any recommended rate increase. Our 2014 capital project plan includes continuation of the street overlay program. It also includes a continuation of the ramp improvements throughout the city in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act that's required to ensure accessibility for all citizens. The city will continue to partner with Tarrant County for qualifying street overlays. Tarrant County agrees to provide the labor for certain collector streets if Euless will provide the materials. This allows us to stretch our dollars and improve more streets than we could otherwise afford. For 2014, improvements are scheduled along Trojan Trail and Ector Drive from Trojan Trail to West Euless Boulevard, and along Midway Drive from Ector to North Main Street. The current year budget also includes funding for the design phase of the reconstruction of Cullum Drive. Staff will be requesting that council consider funding the construction portion of this project during 2014. The project scope calls for the complete reconstruction of Cullum Drive from East Euless Boulevard to East Hewitt Lane and includes curbs, gutters, and storm drainage. This project is scheduled to be paid for with cash. The proposed budget also includes funding to continue the annual replacement of aging water and wastewater lines throughout the city. For 2014, a wastewater line replacement is scheduled in the vicinity of Denton Drive, and a water line replacement is also scheduled along El Camino Real. The city's water and wastewater budget includes approximately $1 million annually to ensure that the system's infrastructure is properly maintained and that needed maintenance is not inappropriately deferred. Staff will also be recommending a program to begin replacing aging water meters. Staff is currently evaluating options for this replacement and will provide council with a full briefing on a recommended implementation plan at a later date. When undertaken, this project will likely require a combination of cash reserves and debt due to the expected cost of the project. Staff also expects to recommend that the council consider funding, continuing the funding for the reclaimed water system expansion. Potable water will continue to be in high demand, and this expansion provides an alternative source for millions of gallons of reclaimed water to be used for irrigation and non-potable needs. For the prior year, reclaimed water represented a reduction in potable water use of approximately 6%. This project will be constructed in a number of phases, and the funding will be provided from a combination of cash reserves and debt. We will give you a more thorough review of the Glade Park development later, but in brief, we expect this development to really take off within the next 12 months. As we have explained before, the city has agreed to assist with construction of some of the roads and infrastructure within the development as our contribution towards the project. These improvements are funded from increased revenues from the development through a tax increment reinvestment zone that was created for the area, in addition to a public improvement district. A portion of the revenue that is generated from within the zone is dedicated to cover the debt service that's associated with the necessary improvements. We also want to give you a quick update on several capital projects that were underway that have been completed since our last meeting, that was last June. We have completed the Ash Lane project from Aransas east to Main Street. That was a previously existing 2-lane asphalt road that was 22 feet wide and did not have drainage, curb, and gutter or sidewalks on the north side. The new roadway is a 44-foot wide street that includes underground drainage, curb and gutter, and sidewalks on both sides, and also has new water and wastewater service lines. This was a joint project that we did with Tarrant County. Several new accessible ramps have also been installed throughout the city. As I mentioned, the Americans with Disability Act requires the city to provide ramps with truncated domes in conjunction with street reconstruction projects and overlays to provide access to those with disabilities. And this will be an effort that we will be continuing for many years. South Pipeline Road Bridge, which is located east of Summerbrook Drive and west of American Boulevard, was a joint project with the City of Fort Worth, and that project has also been completed. City overlays started this week in the Park Crestmore addition, and that's located generally south of State Highway 183, north of West Euless Boulevard, and just west of Ector Drive. There will also be overlays in the Oakwood Terrace East 2nd Edition, and that is generally east of South Main Street between West Hewitt and Reeves Court. County overlays have already been completed along Trailwood Drive and Summit Ridge in the Trailwood Edition, and also along Bays Road from Anthony Drive to Priest Lane, and also in the West Park area from West Euless Boulevard to South Pipeline Road. And then the current budget also provided for wastewater line replacements along Ross Avenue and West Hewitt Lane, and also along East Hewitt Lane, John Vernon Lane, and Slaughter Lane. And as you've heard on several of these projects, the city strives to cash flow as many of these capital projects as financially feasible, and we have maintained one of the lowest debt rates of all of our surrounding communities in both our general obligation debt and also our water and wastewater debt. However, there are times that it is necessary to issue debt, and when that is justified based on the useful life and the benefit of the project, we do consider that in addition to our strategy of utilizing cash reserves whenever possible. So that concludes my presentation, so I'll turn it back to Mr. McKamie for any questions or comments that you might have.
Just to add a comment there on the rental car tax that she covered early in that, you may have seen that's about a $13 million revenue stream that we have that comes from primarily the rental car facility out at DFW Airport. It's paid by travelers that rent cars out there. We share that equally with the city of Dallas and the city of Fort Worth. When the voters adopted that tax, what year was that? 99, I think. The city council determined at that time that we would take our share, our third of that, the city of Euless' third of that, which currently is around $4 million a year, and we would dedicate a third of it to reduction of property taxes. So every dollar that we receive that we retain, a third of it goes to reducing our property tax levels. A third of it would go to debt reduction or debt avoidance, and then a third of it would go to special projects. So most of what has been done around here in the last few years, she showed you Ash Lane, the year before we did Bays Road, I think the Cullman project is primarily funded by rental car tax. So this building that you're in was funded by rental car tax. Most of what we have done has been cash flowed from that fund. It has been a huge, huge blessing to the city of Euless to allow these projects to occur without incurring a great deal of debt. And as you said, we have one of the lower debt levels around because of that. It is not that we have done less for our citizens, it's actually the rental car tax that's allowed that to happen. So with that, Council, do y'all have anything you'd like to add to any of that? And if not, I would.
You might mention the fact that the groundbreaking tomorrow at the airport for the new.
Yeah, the DFW Airport is breaking ground at on what they call Southgate Plaza. It is just north of the rental car facility there at DFW, and if there will be a hotel, it's a Hyatt place, I believe, and the post office. There's some retail. What else, Charlie?
New headquarters.
Yeah, the new headquarters for DFW. They are spread out all over that airport, which is larger than the island of Manhattan, and so they'll be consolidating their facilities out there into the new corporate headquarters.
And it's
so
in
it's, sir,
and
it is in Euless, and so that will be additional sales tax that we will get from some of the retailers, and motel tax that we'll receive from the hotel. The other two hotels that are out there are not in Euless, but this Hyatt place that we're building it's a 132 room Hyatt place, I believe. I keep looking at Charles Sincomani because he's worked there for 30-some years, but it's good news for the city of Euless. Very good news. So and if you just looked around our area, the construction market is coming back. We're building houses. Ms. Allenfeld is a realtor. She and I were talking at lunch today about if you're going to make an offer on a house, if you're going to look at a house, you better be ready to make an offer right away because they're selling quickly. But some of the increases in our budget this year will come from things such as that. Our revenues will increase, but when we repair your streets, the concrete that we use to repair it is costing us more. The labor that we might use, other than our own labor, is costing us more. So everything is going up these days, and that's the main thing that you see